Have you ever strolled along the beach and seen a seashell, and you bend down and you pick it up and you look at it and wonder to yourself, what lived inside of here? What was its purpose? What's its function? What did it do? Besides looking pretty and being decorations in people's homes, there are things that lived inside of here before they are now what we hold as possessions. This is a giant starfish. Technically, it's known as a sea star because it's not a fish at all. It doesn't have gills. It doesn't have scales. It's not a fish. And they eat a diet of clams, oysters, mussels, barnacles, and small tiny fish. And the way that they eat is there's a sac in here which extends out and will completely wrap around their prey, digest it, and then their stomach goes back up inside of the shell. They reproduce by laying eggs. You can't tell the difference between a male and a female sea star. So what the female will do is release her eggs, and then the male comes along and fertilizes them, and then they sit at the bottom of the ocean for a while, and then they will hatch. If they are left alone without human interference, sea stars can live to be 35 years old, or on record, according to National Geographic, that's one of the oldest living sea stars that they know of. Their habitat is in tropical climates, but also polar climates. No fresh water, only salt water. According to NOAAfisheries.com, you can find them in the deep ends of the ocean, the shallow ends, tide pools, and around seagrasses. They cannot survive out of water for very long at all. If they were to be out of the water, they've got to get back in quickly or they'll dry up by the sun and then they die. The sea stars are at risk from ocean acidification, which plays in part with climate change. Too much acid in the ocean greatly affects their health, their livelihoods. The queen conch snail, which is actually like a mollusk that lived inside of here before, but this is what's left over when the snail inside passes away. These are herbivores. They eat algae, seagrass, stuff like that in the ocean. And they reproduce by having fertilized eggs, which are released into the ocean. And they also, somewhat similar to the sea star, the eggs fall to the bottom of the ocean, and then after a few days they're hatched. The queen conch can live up to 25 to 40 years without human interference. And you can find queen conchs in warm tropical waters. They're found in the sand, in seagrass, and coral reefs. No fresh waters. They're only found in salt water. And they too can only be out of water for a very, very short period of time before they risk themselves being dried up by the sun. Both of these, the sea star and the giant conch, are at risk because of poaching. Their meat, the conch's meat, is something very popular, like in the Caribbean, down around Florida Keys. But it goes beyond them being harvested for meat. People are poaching them for their shells and then to sell to the public, tourists, and stuff like that. This is staghorn coral. I have a larger picture because I know it can be difficult to see. Their diet consists of byproducts from photosynthesis, and also they tend to eat very small fish and zooplankton, which is, plankton is small microscopic organisms that float throughout the ocean, and zooplankton is the same thing, but also like stages of animals that haven't reached maturity yet, that they will also feed on. The lifespan of staghorn coral is unknown, but it's very similar to a tree. If you can count the rings on the inside, it gives you an estimate of about how long they've lived. They can grow up to 6.5 feet each branch, 6.5 feet long. These are only found in tropical waters. You won't find them in fresh water. You won't find them in cold water. And these are at risk because of hurricanes, predation, algae overgrowth, and a disease called white band, which is just basically a bacteria overgrowth, and then it attacks the coral and it kills them off. The Red List website says that white band disease is the most abundant thing that kills the coral compared to everything else. If you add hurricanes and predators feeding on them, it's the white band disease that kills the coral the most. All of these are threatened or endangered species on the list of endangered species, and it's because, like I said earlier, these two things are poached because they're huge markets for the islanders to sell to tourists. And I understand that the tourists need to, or the islanders need to make a living somehow, but there's got to be a fine line between killing them off and then becoming endangered and making a livelihood for themselves. So next time that you're walking along the ocean and you are on the seashore and you see a seashell, remember that there was something valuable at one time that lived inside of these, and they're not just for decorations in our home. If you can enjoy these things, please try to enjoy them in their natural habitat.